Well, hello and how are you? Hey, friends, it's me, Shenandoah Briscoe, coming to you live right here in St. Charles, Missouri, home of the Christmas traditions. Yes, sir, from November 27th through December 24th, every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Just capture in your mind, if you will, and take in the sense of roasting chestnuts. American life was simpler, and Christmas was elegant and magical. And welcome to the place where Christmas past and present become one. A place where storybook characters come to life right before your very eyes. A place where the typical hustle and bustle of the holiday season melt away and allow you to enjoy the Yuletide sights and sounds and magic of yesteryear. Yes, friends, St. Charles, Missouri on Main Street, November 27th through 24th, Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Alrighty then. So, that being said, this here is going to be blog number 285. That's right, 285. So we're getting there. We're almost to that 300 mark. 365 is what we're looking for, or 360. 365. I think that's how many days are in a year. One of these days, I'm going to get old enough to learn my lesson on how many days are in a year. And then that way, when I say how many days are in the year, I'll be pretty accurate. I could ask Rain Man. He would know. He would know how many days are in a year. He'd know how many hours are in a year. He'd know how many seconds were in a year. 'Cause, well, he's Rain Man. Watched that the other day on TV, so had to bring it up. Like the look? Well, I have to tell you, I got me a new caregiver for Sundays. And she's pretty good. I have to tell you, she put me all together, got me up and in the chair, and talking about a massage. Boy, she went through massage training in school. She was going to take on massage therapy as one of her courses. I mean, as her life's ambition, as her goal, she was going to be a massage therapist, and so I'm in luck. I get a good workout massage during the day now. So there you have it. I feel much more comfortable today. But anywho, I'm warmer today than I was yesterday because, well, I've been sitting in front of my heater. It's really late today. So I'm sorry that I'm getting it out to you so late. It's actually 9 o'clock. And the reason it's 9 o'clock is because, well, somebody else was on my computer today until 3 o'clock. And then about 3 o'clock I went in my room and I took me a long nap because I got stuck last night. In the middle of the night, 4 o'clock in the morning, I wake up and I get stuck in this movie and I watch the whole movie until about 15 minutes until 8 o'clock, and I fall asleep and I miss the end of it. Of course I did. So, I'm going to have to figure out how to go about getting to the end of it. The name of the movie was Heaven and Earth. Not Heaven on Earth, but Heaven and Earth. And it was a movie about the Vietnam War and about this rice girl. She was the rice princess or whatever. Rice field princess. Who knows? Anyway, it was a pretty good movie. And Tommy Lee Jones was in it. But anyway, I missed it. I watched it until near the end and then missed the end. So I don't know how it ended. Because I know she came back to America with him. And then they were talking divorce, and he was going to shoot her in the head, and that didn't work out. He couldn't do it. So, I don't know. Anywho, let's see. I am going to sing today on account I feel like it. And so I'm going to. And so therefore, give me a second to look up the song. Because you noticed the other day I went through the whole thing and didn't sing nary a word. I done some songs, but I didn't sing them. Alright, hold on. Give me a second. Okay, I decided not to sing. I decided to do something different. Give me just a second. I gotta get in tune here, and I'll be ready for you. Okay, here we go. The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calvers County by me, Mark Twain. In compliance with the request of a friend of mine who wrote me from the East, I called on good-natured, garrulous old Sam Wheeler and inquired after my friend Leonidas Wesley Smiley, W. Smiley, that is, as requested to do, and I hereunto append the result. I have a lurking suspicion that Leonidas W. Smiley is a myth, that my friend never knew such a personage, and that he only conjured that if I asked old Wheeler about him, it would remind him of his infamous Jim Smiley, and he would go to work and bore me nearly to death with some infernal reminiscence of him as long and tedious as it should be useless to me. And if that was the design, well, it certainly did succeed. Well, I found Simon Wheeler dozing comfortably by the bar-room stove of the old dilapidated tavern in the ancient mining camp of Angels. Well, I noticed that he was fat and bald-headed, and had an expression of winning gentleness and simplicity upon his tranquil countenance. Well, he roused up and gave me a good day, and I told him a friend of mine had commissioned me to make some inquiries about a cherished companion of his boyhood named Leonidas W. Smiley. Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, the young minister of the gospel, who he had heard was at one time a resident of Angel's Camp. I added that if Mr. Wheeler could tell me anything about the Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, I would feel under many obligation to him. Well, Simon Wheeler backed me into a corner and blockaded me there with his chair, and then he sat down and reeled off a monotonous narrative which follows through these paragraphs. He never smiled, he never frowned, he never changed his voice from the gentle flow key to which he turned the initial sentence. Well, he never betrayed the slightest suspicion of enthusiasm, but although the intermediate narrative there ran a vein of impressive earnestness and sincerity, which showed me plainly that so far from his imagining that there was anything ridiculous and funny about his story, he regarded it as really important matter. Well, and admired its two heroes as men and transcendent genius in finesse. To me, the spectacle of a man drifting cerniously along through such a queer yarn without ever smiling was exquisitely absurd. As I said before, I asked him to tell me what he knew of Reverend Leonidas W. Smiley, and he replied as follows. I let him go on in his own way and never interrupted him once. There was a feller here once by the name of Jim Smiley in the winter of 49. Oh, or maybe it was the spring of 50. I don't recall exactly. Somehow, though, what makes me think it was one or the other is because I remember the big flume wasn't finished when he first came to camp. But anyway, he was the curious man about always betting on anything that turned up you ever see. If he could get anybody to bet on the other side, and if he couldn't, he'd change sides. Anyway, that suited the other men. The other man would suit him anyway, just so he got a bet. He was satisfied, but still was lucky, uncommonly lucky. He most always came out a winner. He was always ready and lying for a chance. There couldn't be no solidity thing mentioned, but that feller offered to bet on it and take any side you pleased, as I was just telling you. If there was a horse race, you'd find him flush, or you'd find him busted at the end of it. If there was a dog fight, he'd bet on it. If there was a cat fight, he'd bet on it. If there was a chicken fight, he'd bet on it. If there was two birds sitting on a fence, he would bet you which one would fly first. Or if there was a camp meeting, he would be the regular to bet on Parson Walker, which he judged to be the best exhorter about here. And so he was too. And a good man. If he ever seen a straddled bug start to go anywhere, he would bet you how long it would take him to get wherever he was going to. And if you took him up, he would follow that straddled bug to Mexico. But what he would find out where he was bound for and how long he was on the road. Lots of the boys here had seen that Smiley and can tell you about him. Why, it never made no difference to him. He would bet on anything the dangest. Dangest feller. Parson Walker's wife lied very sick once for a good while, and it seemed as if they weren't going to save her. But one morning he came in, and Smiley asked how she was, and he said she was considerable better. Thank the Lord for his infinite mercy and coming on so smart that with the blessing of Providence she'd get well yet. And Smiley, before he thought says, "Well, I'll risk 2.5 that she don't anyway." Tisher Smiley had a mare. The boys called her the 15-minute nag. But that was only in fun, because of course she was faster than that, and he used to win money on that horse for all she was slow and always had the stamina or the distemper or the consumption or something of that kind. They used to give her 200 and 300 yards start and then pass her under way, but always at the fag end of the race she'd get excited and desperate like and come cavorting in saddle and straddled up and scattering her legs around limber, and sometimes in the air and sometimes on out to one side amongst the fences and kicking up more than dust and raising up more racket with her coughing and sneezing and blowing her nose, and always fetch up at the stand just about neck ahead, as near as you could chip her to it. This ain't no easy story, is it? And he had a little small bull pup that, to look at him, you'd think he weren't worth a cent, but to set around and look ornery and lay for a chance to steal something. But as soon as money was on him, he was a different dog. He unjawed, begging to stick. He underjawed, begging to stick out like the forecastle of a steamboat, and his teeth would uncover and shine savage-like in the furnace, and the dog might tackle him and bullyrag him and bite him and throw him over his shoulder 2 or 3 times, and Andrew Jackson, which was the name of the pup, Andrew Jackson would never let on but what he was satisfied and hadn't expected nothing else, and the bets being doubled and doubled on the other side all the time until the money was all up, and then all of a sudden he would grab the other dog just by the gint of his hind leg and freeze on it. Not chew, you understand, but only just grip it and hang on till they throttled up the sponge. And if it was a year, Smiley always came out a winner on that pup, till he harnessed a dog once that didn't have no hind legs, because they'd been sawed off by a circular saw, and when the thing had gone along far enough and the money was all up and he come to make a snatch for his pet bolt, he saw in a minute how he'd been imposed on, and how the other dog had him in the door, so to speak. And he peered surprised, and then he looked sort of discouraged like, and didn't try no more to win the fight. And so he got shucked out bad. He gave Smiley a look as much as to say his heart was broke, and it was his fault for putting up a dog, and would have made a name for himself if he'd lived. For the stuff was in him, and he had genius. I know it, because he hadn't had no opportunities to speak of, and it don't stand to reason that dog can't make such a fight as he could under the circumstances if he hadn't no talent. It always makes me feel sorry when I think of that last fight. Oh, hisn't, and the way it turned out. Whew. Boy, I can see why this guy would be boring. And I hope you're following me, 'cause I'm hardly following me, and I'm doing the reading. Well, there Smiley had a rat terrier and chicken cocks and tomcats and all of them kinds of things, till you couldn't rest and you couldn't fetch nothing for him to bet on. But he'd match you. He'd catch a frog one day and took him home and said he calclatched to educate him. And so he never done nothing for the 3 months but sat in his backyard and learned that frog to jump. And you bet he did learn him too. He'd give him a little pinch, a little punch behind, and the next minute you'd see that frog whirling in the air like a donut seed. Like a donut, see him turn one somersault, or maybe a couple if he got to go start, and come down flat-footed and all right like a cat. He got him up so in the matter of catching flies, and kept him in practice so constant that he'd nail a fly every time as far as he could see him. Smiley said all a frog wanted was education, and he could do most anything. I believe him, and I believe him. Why, I've seen him set Daniel Webster down here on the floor. Daniel Webster was the name of the frog, and sing out, "Flies, Daniel, flies." And quicker than you could wink, he'd spring straight up and snake a fly off of the counter there and flop down on the floor again as solid as a gob of mud, and fall to stretching the sides of his head, scratching the sides of his head with his hind foot, and indifferent, as if he had no idea he'd been doing any more than any frog might do. You never see a frog so modest and you never see the frog so modest and ever seen. Oh, and straightforward as he was, for all he was so gifted, and when it come to a fair and square jumping on a dead level, he could get over more ground at one straddle than any animal of his breed you ever did see. Jumping on a dead level was his strong suit, you understand. And when it came to that, Smiley would ant up money on him as long as he had a red. Don't know what a red is, so sorry folks. Smiley was monstrous proud of his frog, and well, he might be, for fellers that he traveled and been everywheres, and all said he laid over any frog that ever they see. Phew. I tell you what, if you want to hear the rest of this story, you better go and read it yourself. Just look it up on one of them search engines and find it, because this is way over my time. Goodbye, my friends. Well, it's time to go. I said goodbye, my friends. Yes, it's time to go. Goodbye, my friends. It's time to go. I hate to leave you, but I really must go. Goodbye, my friends. Goodbye. Alrighty then. Sorry about that. Anyway, hey, this here's Shenandoah Briscoe saying hello and how are you? You know, God loves you and so do I. So be blessed and tune in next time. I ain't gonna finish this story, but you can finish it. You just go on to any old search engine and you look up The Famous Jumping Frog by Mark Twain, and it'll just give you that. It'll give you this story. Give you something to look forward to. The end of the story. Alrighty. Be blessed, and we'll see you tomorrow, alright? Well, alright.